I really had my doubts when I was buying the IQOO Z5, which came with a mid-tier processor on it. As by practice, I've always bought a phone which at least had a flagship chip on it. Even if it was not the latest or the greatest, it was to some extent a flagship chip. But seeing how my income has risen against the prices of these flagships, yeah, that has stopped happening a long way back. Hey everyone, Mukul here. So for the past couple of years, a lot of mid-tier phones are performing as good as a lot of past flagship phones, and some brands are just behaving plain absurd when it comes to pricing their current flagships. I was quite happy with my OnePlus 8, but for some odd reason, the 6GB variant started behaving very stuttery once the RAM on it got filled, and unless I cleared all the apps, the phone always just tried its best to not work. It froze completely. So I sold it and I got the 256GB 12GB RAM variant of the Z5 Air, and I hoped that it would be more than sufficient for the Funtouch OS the phone runs on, in case it turns out to be poorly optimized in terms of RAM management, like how shockingly the OnePlus 8 behaved before I sold it off. So yeah, I just hoped for the best and I jumped on the bandwagon of mid-tier processor phones because for my general usage, a mid-tier processor should be more than sufficient for my day-to-day daily tasks. Also, spending more than 40 or 50,000 rupees or 500-600 US dollars on just a mere phone, well, that has really never been an attractive option for a consumer like me. I'm sure there are people like me who know deep inside their heart that all this is a phone in the end. I mean, my phone isn't a work tool for me. It mostly is a phone which can take pictures too and some social media stuff. Oh, and I almost forgot, calls. Yeah, a phone should make calls too. Well, the box of the IQOO Z5 was quite shorter than the IQOO 7 I had previously reviewed. In the box, you see the phone and a 44-watt charger and a transparent cover, which feels pretty nice, but fits a little loosely on the phone. But hey, I mean, it's free, so I'm going to use it for some time at least before I throw it off. This phone is all plastic, and yeah, if you love metal, then it would be pretty hard for anyone to convince you for a plastic phone. But for me personally, I don't mind any of them. If the material finish on the body of the phone is nice, then I can happily live with it. And anyway, I use my phones with back covers on them, so yeah. And the iridescent behavior of the back panel is definitely a feat to my eyes, and I still love staring at it even after 10 days of regular usage with the phone. The huge chunk of the camera module is something that I would fear might get scratched over time if not taken care of. If you are someone who always lays their phone on the back, then having a better cover will definitely help in this case. Because this case, even though it has some bump on the back of it, it would be better if you have a case which has a better bump on it. Oh. The phone feels quite stable in the hand as it is of course lifeless. And yeah, it doesn't feel heavy or bulky even with the cover. The phone also came with a pre-installed screen guard, and even with it, the touch response was smooth as silk or butter or whatever oil works for you. The connectivity and calling experience has been quite good, and the earpiece also sounds good for calls and stuff, whatever stuff you would want to do with it. The bezels around the screen might be noticeable in the video, but in real world usage, I rarely notice them because I'm mostly focused on the content on the phone and not the bezels. I mean, it's psychological. Once you want to buy a phone and you see all these bezels around the phone, you might hate it, but once you start using it, you will never notice it. The screen of course isn't AMOLED, and for someone like me who has mostly used AMOLED screens on the phones, the IPS difference was clearly noticeable. But the 120Hz refresh rate and the uber smooth and feathered touch response made me ignore that fact to some extent. The colors are definitely not as punchy or saturated as they are on AMOLED screens, but the color accuracy seems pretty good. The outdoor viewing is not bad too, and I was able to manage with the maximum brightness whenever I was outdoors and the sun was shining on my head. So yeah, I think most of us will be pretty okay with it, unless and until you're watching media content. But yeah, despite being an HDR10 display, I really couldn't see the HDR option on Netflix, Prime Video or Hotstar. But it was there on YouTube, and for some odd reason or bug, the whole screen gets a bit green when I played HDR content on it. This was a known bug and issue on the IQOO 7 too, and it's lame they haven't fixed it yet. Well, good thing I don't watch my shows or movies on the phone, otherwise this would have terribly sucked for a consumer who watches a lot of media content on the phone. The haptics are stable but sometimes do get all over the place. I won't call them flagship grade because of course the price isn't anywhere close to what many flagship cost these days. But the subtle typing haptics are just fine. And of course, IQOO being IQOO, there will be a ton of agreements you need to accept before you could operate the phone. It's kind of sickening and scary how many agreements they need from a user who paid real money for a phone, but it is what it is. So yeah, sadly. The same thing repeats for many of the iQOO's inbuilt apps, and even though I haven't debloated the phone yet, I have never subscribed or agreed to any of these apps, and because of that I have not received a single weird notification on the notification panel yet. So yeah, if you hate those weird notifications, don't accept any of the agreements of any of these apps. But I did encounter a weird bug when I first set up the phone. The phone had no network reception on the first go, and even restarting it didn't help. So then I tried disabling and enabling the Wi-Fi calling toggle, and then only the phone immediately caught onto the network and I received those OTPs which were not coming for some reason. So yeah, this was kind of weird. But since then, nothing like this has ever happened. So yeah, I think it was a one-time thing. The phone at first showed a small update and then later showed an error and then pushed a huge 4.5 GB update. So yeah, you better get that recharge done. The phone's UI will feel very stockish. I mean, it's so good that they ditched that crappy Funtouch OS UI which came on previous Vivo phones. And this new iteration of Funtouch OS makes the iQOO feel and operate so insanely snappy. The smooth animations, the rapid multitasking and the overall general operation which you might want to expect from a good phone are definitely there. I mean, the fluidity is so fluid that most of the fluids will definitely appreciate the fluid nature of the OS's fluidity here. Oh man, I got that right in the first go. I think even the Funtouch OS here has traces from Color OS, and hence the overall usage doesn't feel that far off from Oxygen OS, which I know is a huge compliment to what iQOO is trying to achieve here. The stock Google dialer and the messaging app and the One UI like settings panel, and most of the stuff here feels and behaves like stock Android, so I was pretty happy with my experience. And this is one of those phones wherein I felt I didn't have to go into developer settings and increase the animation speed. I mean, the default animation is pretty fast for my liking, so that is one thing, that is one step which wasn't needed. The UI does need a little bit of polishing here and there, as some of the labels under different kinds of sub-menus have a wider than required spacing. But that is something I can live with, because now I have to. One thing which I really despise is that the drawer stays white even when the dark mode is activated. So far this is the only part where I feel the dark mode isn't behaving correctly, so I hope they fix this soon, or if there's something I'm missing then let me know. There were some bloatware folders of some apps which iQOO wants you to install, but strangely as soon as I logged into the iQOO account, which is there in the settings panels, those folders just disappeared. I mean, how? When it comes to the cameras, I would rate them as per their pricing, of course, and the TLDR is that they are just about fine. The rear camera pictures get ample bright after processing, but they lack details if you try to pixel peep into the pictures. I mean, they have this pastel kind of a retouch up applied in all of the pictures, which make them look nicer when you look at them from afar, but as soon as you zoom in or crop into a picture, you will notice those pastel effects. So yeah, if you rely on cropping a lot of pictures, then the details might disappoint you a bit. The 64 megapixel mode hardly takes any more details on the picture, and Gcam actually deteriorates the overall quality of the image. So yeah, no point of hustling through finding the right Gcam app for the phone. The ultra wide isn't sharp too, being just a 8 megapixel sensor, but it does get really ultra wide. And for most of your day shots or for the shots which have ample light, you will be fine with it. That is if you're not going to pixel peep much. Also, the Z5 is horrible when it comes to managing the white balance, as the color tones on most of the shots were all over the place. The night mode does enhance a shot a lot too, but the white balance is just super sad. I mean, personally I can manage to work with these, and to the average consumer these won't look bad at all. But yeah, it's clear that iQOO really didn't prioritize the cameras or the camera app optimization on this phone. The selfies do manage to come out nice, but again till you try to pixel peep and try to find more details, except for the strange over sharpening, it does. So unless you do that, you would be pretty happy with most of these shots you take from the front cameras, but the dynamic range was kind of sad. There are also a lot of modes to play within the camera app, like the Pro mode, and the Astro mode has a long shutter speed of 50 seconds, so only try that with a tripod of course. And yeah, don't blame me for these ultra starry night skies of my city. The videos lack any sort of optical stabilization, but I think they do a fine job in terms of electronic stabilization, and the details captured are quite decent too.
This is how the ultra wide video looks like. Quite stabilized, not so bad, but yeah, you can't change, you can't zoom in, zoom out from the standard lens to the ultra wide and vice versa.
In low light, the videos managed to do a fine job, and I didn't even bother to test ultra wide sensor when the light was low, as it was pretty bad. Videos from the front are workable and decent too, considering the phone's price again. but they really suck when it comes to managing any kind of dynamic range. But in low light, not so impressive performance. I mean, yeah, it's fine. Can't expect a lot from a phone in this budget in low light. So yeah, I can say overall I'm averagely satisfied with the cameras on the phone for its price. I might have sounded more negative than I should be, but that is because I'm coming from a phone which cost twice as much as the Z5 and of course had way better cameras on it and way better image processing also. So if someone asks me for a recommendation for a camera phone in this price segment, I wouldn't recommend the IQOO Z5 at all, as the Pixel 4a is still a far superior camera phone which you can buy sometimes for around 25,000 rupees whenever it is on deal and whenever these crazy sales are on. I'm not a mobile gamer of any sort, but I tried playing Battleground Mobile on the IQOO Z5 and I found this menu on the left hand side which has these nifty cool gaming features like the Ultra Gaming Mode, which I believe boasts the clock of the CPU and the GPU on the Snapdragon 778. For some reason I dig these animations. Yeah, pretty nice. But the Ultra Game Optimization agreement looked blank in both dark and light mode, so I am not entirely sure what I had agreed to when I accepted those terms just to play the game. I mean, I hope accepting a blank agreement was fine. So yeah, I was able to play Battlefield aka PUBG in other countries at ultra frame rates with HDR on. Choosing the Ultra HDR showed a message that the setting will soon be available for my device. So I guess a few people might just wait for this. Well, I played a whole long match and I honestly did enjoy the session and somehow ended up being the MVP with most kills. So I guess I was the best noob among the 100 other noobs during this match. So yeah, good on me. For the duration of the match, the device did get warm overall at ultra boost settings, but I faced no stutter or any sort of frame drops, which were at least visible to the eyes. And the battery on the phone actually surprised me a lot. The phone never managed to give a screen on time less than 6.5 to 7 hours every single time when the phone was set to 120Hz refresh rate. So I guess the IPS display and the near stock experience and of course the other sort of optimizations IQOO has managed to do on the Funtouch OS here, I mean all of that, they are really working. The charging with the slightly bulky 44-watt charger takes about 15 minutes to charge from 0 to 30% and then 12 minutes from 30 to 50%. From 50 to 100% it took about 35 minutes or so. So yeah, this is definitely ample fast for someone like me, and I really don't like the idea of charging phones with more wattage anyway. I wouldn't have minded the 60-watt charging the IQOO Z3 had, but the 44-watt doesn't let me complain about the charging speed here too. So yeah, I think most of you would be more than satisfied and happy with the charging speeds here. The stereo speaker setup on the phone gets ample loud and manages a sort of neutral sound overall. I can definitely happily live with this. The speakers also somehow emulated surround sound when I tried to watch Avengers Endgame on Hotstar for a brief period of time, which was something unexpected and nice. There's also an audio quality restoration feature, but the slight difference is only noticeable when you're watching with earphones on, and it does try to improve the clarity and richness overall a little. But I'm honestly not sure if everyone is going to notice it though. The sound from the beloved 3.5mm jack sounds good, and to be honest sounds pretty close to how things sound on my PC too, with the same set of earphones I use. Both the face unlock and the fingerprint unlock work blazing fast, and I just learned over time that a physical fingerprint sensor is going to be always faster than any on-screen fingerprint sensor. Also, I didn't have to press the button to unlock the phone screen, and just placing the finger on the sensor worked. Of course, this is faster, but sometimes this can also mean many accidental unlocks when you might just want to keep the phone facing down, which is a personal habit. When it comes to the customizations, the Funtouch OS on the IQOO Z5 is a la-la land. You can do some sort of edits from the stock gallery app on the pictures, and then you can turn on the torch by holding the volume down key and other sort of stuff too. And then there are a bloody lot of options and features which if I decide to share in this video, then the video would be at least an hour long, because there are a hell lot many customizable features on the Funtouch OS. So I will post some of the best features I personally use. And the Funtouch OS does really deserve some sort of award for how it managed to keep so much customization here, and with that it succeeded in keeping the phone super frigging fluid. I mean, for this specific reason, I love my decision here, and when it comes to choosing the phone for the raw performance and no lags, when it comes to daily operations, I simply loved my experience so far with the IQOO Z5. A lot of time, a lot of apps stayed in the memory even after a complete 8 hours of nap. But then there were some apps that get removed in a span of few hours too. I believe turning off the optimization from a few of these specific apps will help you retain them in the memory for real long. Also, sometimes you would get notification of this wisdom engine trying to act all wise and stuff, highlighting which of the apps on the phone is eating up all the battery. So despite having a few UI bugs and not so great cameras on the phone, and also an almost acceptable screen, definitely not the best out there. If you're someone like me who wants an ultra fluid phone and doesn't want to shell out the crazy amount of money flagships demand these days, well, the IQOO Z5 could be a pretty great option in my opinion. The amount I paid for the flagship tier, 256GB UFS 3.1 storage and 12GB LPDDR5 RAM inside of the phone with a quite capable SoC, well, of course there had to be some sacrifices, otherwise the cost would have easily jumped at least 10,000 rupees more, and then this would be just another IQOO 7 in that price segment. But there really can't be two phones which have the same specs and the same name, but they are just two different phones. So I'm not sure if that is something which is viable. So there's nothing else to really conclude here, as I made sure to conclude every single point already in the review so far. Let me know if I missed anything, and you can also hop onto our Discord server for more chit chats on relevant content. Well, until then, until the next video, stay safe humans. That's all for today. MewBot out! Out! You know, I'm really someone who doesn't host their videos holding a phone or a device or any kind of product in their hands, because to me it does feel pretty unnatural. I don't know, for some reason.